Hi everyone, I've got about 6 cream crested leg bars in my incubators that are going to be hatching in just a number of days. As that day comes closer, I am always running through this checklist in my mind of the things I want to remember. Even though I've done this a multitude of times now, it's easy to forget the things that can actually lead to a chick's death. So let's talk about the most common mistakes that are made when you're trying to raise newly hatched chicks. Now, before we start the conversation of what to do once they're in your brooder, let's make sure you're buying the right kind of chicken. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people going into a local feed store and buying some broiler or like a Cornish cross, thinking that they've got a really good pet or that they're gonna have a great egg layer. Those are meat birds, so make sure that you're doing your research on the type of bird that you want. If you're raising meat birds, then you're gonna be very shocked at how quickly they put on weight. And if they are not dispatched and then used for meat, then they have a very poor quality of life because of how big and heavy they get. They're going to have leg problems and they're also going to have cardiovascular problems. So make sure that you're choosing the right kind of bird for you. Another type of wrong chicken buying is buying a straight run when you know unequivocally that you do not want roosters. If you don't want roosters, I highly suggest that you spend a little bit more money and buy pullets. Pullets is sexed chickens that the people who hatch them know that they are all female. In a straight run, you're very likely going to have a 50-50 mix of roosters to hens. If you know you don't want roosters, but you think that you're saving some money by buying a straight run, you're losing money because at least half of those are not going to be laying eggs for you, and you're going to have to come up with a plan of what to do with your rooster. So another mistake is not having a plan in place for what to do with all the roosters. If you're hatching like me, I'm definitely going to get roosters. There's no way, well, that we know of yet, to prevent roosters from hatching or to make sure that you're only hatching pullets. So I have a plan in place for the roosters, and here's a couple of ideas for you if you're also finding this problem. They can be food. They can absolutely be turned into food. Also, pet stores will sometimes buy your little baby roosters and feed them to their critters, such as snakes or some other animals that enjoy live baby birds. It sounds so grim when I say it out loud. I think one of the worst mistakes that we can make is to buy from the wrong place. Find somebody reputable. Find a company that is reputable. There's a bunch of online places. My local feed store actually has an amazing reputation. They really know what they're doing. I think it comes down to place by place. I've really enjoyed my interaction at the Tractor Supply Company, and I know a lot of people hate them, but I do think that the prices make it so that the average person can enjoy raising chickens, because some pullets are $24 a piece when you buy from a local breeder. So mine are $12 a piece. I think that's kind of expensive. But if you're wanting to get started and you don't have a lot of cash to blow on it, so perhaps Tractor Supply is a place for you. Anyhow, that being said, I think the worst place to buy chickens is obviously off the street, off the road, or from an auction. Those places are filled with diseases. There's no regulation controlling if they are actually selling the bird that they claim it to be. You don't know if somebody's whole flock got sick, and instead of dispatching them like they should, they went and made a buck off of them by selling them on the side of the road. I see this group of people pull into parking lots and they have crates full of chickens and they're selling them for dollars a piece. I guarantee that those chickens are either way too old to lay eggs, or they are sick and they're just trying to get rid of them while recovering a little bit of their financial loss. So side of the road, no. When your babies are born and it's time for them to leave the incubator and put them into their warm brooder, a big mistake is offering food before water. They definitely should have water before they have food. And the reason I say this is because they can have something called mud butt, and that is basically when their poop becomes hardened and it actually encases their little vent where they poop from, and it makes it almost so that they, well, not almost, they are blocked and they can no longer eliminate, and that obviously leads to impaction, which can poison them from the inside out. And so offer water before you offer food to the babies. Some chickens really, and even quail, oh my goodness, and turkeys can't do cold water. So I actually put my water under the heat source or on top of the heat source, just to make sure that the water is warm and not cold for their little tummies. Another mistake that you may be making, to piggyback off of this one, is not checking their little bottoms. Check them every day, check them twice a day. If there's an accumulation of dried up poop on their little bottom, you need to just float them in a little bit of warm water and just slowly work away that little ball of poop. You can wear gloves if you want, if it grosses you out. don't pull on it because you'll pull their feathers out and then they could bleed, but just slowly work it away. Sometimes mud butt is an indication that your brooder is way too hot or not warm enough. So keep a thermometer in there. You want a good 95 degrees the first week, 85 the next, and so on. This little mistake may not apply to everybody, but I think most people who enjoy raising chicks often get into raising another type of poultry, and we love ducks. My husband especially, ducks are his thing. But one mistake that we had made very early on was we put our newly hatched chicks and our ducks together. Chicks and ducks really don't have the same requirements. Ducks grow so much faster than ducks, but the biggest problem is ducks love to like nibble on grass and stuff, and little baby feathers. Oh, cardinals. The little baby ducks will kind of nibble and chew on the baby chick's feathers like it's a source of grass for them, and they can make them like soaking wet. If your chick stays wet for a long time, then obviously they will get cold, and that can lead to some other health problems. Another mistake that I have made many times, unfortunately, until I learned better, was introducing stressful factors into their life. So some of those could be allowing them around large groups of people or children. We have a lot of tours here, and we have a lot of guests here, and children, I mean, God put the wiggle in children. I love to say that. They are the way they are, and that is okay. They are allowed to take up space and to be children. Unfortunately, due to their naturally rambunctious personalities, they can really stress out chickens. And so I have begun to limit letting children from farm camp or from visitors or tours or homeschool groups or whatever to interact with the baby chicks, because they can't contain their excitement. They are so cute, and you just want to squeeze them and hold them. That's pretty stressful for the baby chicks. There's a lot of other things that can stress your chicks out as well, such as moving them from their brooder into their coop before they're ready for it. They really should be fully feathered out and away, not need a heat source anymore before you put them into a coop. One thing I've done to help my chickens who really don't have enough room in their tiny little baby brooder, but they're not quite ready for the big coop, is I now have a grow out brooder. So it's much bigger. It still has a heat element. It's very, very predator safe. I move them very carefully, very slowly, as to not stress them out, and it gives them more room. So that leads me to another common problem with your chicks. Do not overcrowd your baby chicks. Overcrowding can lead to a multitude of problems. They can overheat like that. That also, if they don't have good enough ventilation, which they cannot, even if you have the perfect brooder with the perfect amount of ventilation will be halted because those chicks are so clustered together that they do not have sufficient airflow. So some of your chicks, if they are crowded in that brooder, they are suffocating. So don't overcrowd your brooder. Quick breakfast break. Look what my daughters brought me. And they put a ton of pepper on it because they know I love pepper. We love sausage! Okay, I got another weird one for you. That breakfast was so good. Using medicated food. Medicated food really, the way that it works, okay, what they're trying to do is to treat possibly coccidiosis. That's really, really common. It happens a lot in baby chicks. But the problem is, if your baby chicks are fine and they don't need the medicine, what's happening, the way that they treat those parasites is by starving the body of vitamins. With no vitamins, the parasite will die. And so what you're doing by giving medicated food to a chick who doesn't need it is you're stripping their body of all their vitamins. Low vitamins, especially low vitamin B, is going to cause a lot of weakness in baby chicks. And so I used medicated food like until recently because I thought I was doing the best possible thing by giving them just like a little bit of medicine here and there. They don't need it unless you definitely see signs that something is wrong. In fact, I think that you should be giving a non-medicated baby chick food. Do not give a layer feed to your baby chicks. There's so much calcium that it's going to cause digestive problems in there. So baby chicks don't need all that calcium. Calcium is specifically necessary for a laying hen, for the development of the shell, and also just to help with the muscle contracted. Also, do not give vitamins at the same time that you're giving antibiotics or medicated food. They will cancel each other out, and you will prolong their sickness, and you will also waste money because those vitamins, especially like poultry cell or rooster booster or like a liquid vitamin B, those are expensive. So don't do it. This is my last one. The last mistake that I see is not having the things on hand necessary to deal with an emergency. In my experience, And I would safely say, in the experience of my peers who are also raising chickens, you will end up being your own veterinarian. In this part of North Carolina, there are no chicken experts. There's a chicken expert like in Tennessee, and it's $300 to walk in the door. I'm not driving to Tennessee with a chicken that I think is not gonna make the drive. And I'm also not gonna pay $300 to take my chicken to the doctor. That's where I am. I can just buy a new chicken. I know that sounds awful. Hey, it's me from the future. I forgot something super important to talk about. I think I hinted at it, but I didn't go into nearly enough detail. So while I was editing this video, I thought, okay, I've got to pop in an extra one. You've got to heat your brooder correctly. Chicks need 95-degree temperatures in their brooder in order for them to stay alive. Now, each week, as time goes on, their feathers fill in more and more, and they need less heat, so you can lower that degree by 5 degrees every single week, but especially in the first week, keep it warm. If you're not sure if your brooder is warm enough, you can put a little thermometer in there. But the other thing you can do is kind of observe how they act around your heat source. If they are clustered under it, then it might mean that your heat source is too far away or not warm enough. The dangers of them clustering together is suffocation, like we've talked about earlier in the video. But also, if your chicks are very, very far away from your heat source, like they are trying to get away from it, then they are very hot, which can also lead to a ton of problems. So if they are, think of it like a pizza. If the pepperoni is distributed equally, then you know that the temperature in your brooder is correct. You really want to give them enough space to get directly under the heat source or to get away from it, and they can kind of regulate their own body temperature that way. So heat your brooder correctly. I love using a brooder plate, but I have found that I cannot get up to 95 degrees in the first week. I have relied on a heat lamp. As dangerous as they are, I know, but there are ways that you can safely use your heat lamp so that you don't put yourself or your chicks in danger, at least for the first week. Now, one thing that I've done is I've used a little garden germination mat when I germinate my seeds indoors before spring is here. That heat mat, an accompaniment with a brooder plate, like using a germination pad below and a heater plate on top. That's been a great combination of warmth for them. So there's an idea if you absolutely don't want to use a heat lamp, and I understand that there is a huge risk there. So to each his own, but heat your brooder. As long as I'm sitting here adding more things, be really careful about the bedding that you're using for your baby chicks. There are some chicks that will investigate the shavings that you have down for them, and they will accidentally ingest it. So don't use a really fine pine shaving. If you're going to use pine shavings, use those big medium-sized flakes. They're way too big to eat. But if you're going to, definitely don't use sawdust. They'll ingest it. They'll get impacted. That would be awful for them. You know, my favorite thing to use is puppy training pads. For the first week, while they are really trying to figure out how their legs work and how the eating works, using puppy pads is such an easy cleanup for them. So there's my big advice. I'm about to make a companion video to this video with the medicines and the first aid things I think that you should have on hand. So be sure to look for that video. Having things on hand in the time of an emergency, just knowing in your mind, okay, something is wrong, but I probably have it in my medicine cabinet. The thing that I need to fix is will help you be calm and collected so that you can deal with an emergency without adding stress to you. Be sure to check for the companion video coming right after this one on all those medicines that I think you should have on hand. And we will see you in the next video. I hope that this was helpful. If you're thinking about raising chickens, I think you should do it. It has enriched my life and my family's life exponentially. So although it sounds complicated by everything I've presented here to you today, my hope is that this simply helps you to be more successful in what I think is actually a pretty relaxing backyard hobby. That's all for today's video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.